My name is Emily Harper. I'm 38 years old. For 20 years, my mother introduced me the exact same way at every family gathering. Last Saturday, at her 65th birthday celebration, she did it again. 80 guests filled the community hall in Riverton. She raised her glass, pulled me close to her longtime church circle, and flashed that familiar smile. And this is my disappointment, the one who never made anything of herself. The chuckles rippled through the room. Welcome back to Quiet Victory Stories, where the overlooked finally speak up. If you've ever been labeled the family failure, this one's for you. Drop a comment with your city. Subscribe for more. Let's go back to last fall, when I stopped auditioning for my family's approval and started keeping score. It started in late October. I made the 2-hour drive from Des Moines to my hometown.
Riverton, the way other people schedule root canals. Necessary, but you leave a little bruised. My alarm still hits at 4:30 a.m. most days. By 6, I'm on the floor of a distribution center the size of 5 football fields, directing which trucks roll where so 145 stores open fully stocked. That's been my world for 16 years. Nobody in my family knew. In their version, I was still a cashier at the local farm store. Name tag, vest, small talk with customers.
My mother, Karen, preferred that version. It fit the story she'd told since I was 18. I drove past the old water tower and the church where she's claimed the same pew for 40 years, then pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. White siding, Dad's garage out back, sealed tight since his funeral 6 years ago. I sat in the car a moment, watching the kitchen light glow. There are 2 versions of me. One runs supply chains for a regional powerhouse. The other drives home. Only one survives Sunday dinner. I grabbed the pie from the good bakery, answered a quick freight question from our Nebraska team, and walked up the familiar steps. Inside, I could already hear my brother Greg's voice. Loud, warm, always the hero. Remember that sound. It matters later. Sunday dinner had assigned seats, like a scripted play. Greg, 41, sat in Dad's old chair, spinning a tale about landing a big for his insurance firm, complete with dramatic gestures. His wife sat quietly, cutting food for their twins. Mom glowed at her golden son. Then the spotlight swung to me. "Emily's still at the farm store," Mom announced to no one who asked. "Some people just find their little shelf and stay there." She patted my hand with that affectionate cruelty only she could perfect. The neighbor, Linda, had come to return a baking dish. Mom proudly paraded the family. "You know my son Greg, the successful financial consultant. And this is my disappointment." That night driving home, I noticed something new. Linda hadn't tasked what I did. No one ever did. Mom's introduction answered first. Monday morning at 5:55, I badged into the Des Moines distribution center while the sky was still gray. By 6:15, I'd rerouted trucks around a bridge closure, approved emergency equipment for a store in Storm Lake, and talked a shift lead out of quitting. 300 people report up the chain to me in one way or another. My official title is Vice President of Operations for Harlan Farm and Ranch Supply. Privately held, 145 stores across 6 states, healthy 9-figure revenue. I started at 22 as a cashier in store 114 because it was the only place that called me back. Bookkeeper at 24, store manager at 28, regional director at 31, VP at 35. Every rung I earned myself. Victor Harlan, the 72-year-old founder, still walked the warehouse most Mondays. He stopped by my station, glanced at my clipboard, and said, "You're the quietest miracle I ever hired, Emily. Keep it up." That was the real me, the version with performance reviews and P&L statements. My family had no idea. For years, I believed my silence was the problem. Later, I learned my silence had a partner. Someone had been filling the void I left, painting a picture of failure on purpose. That Christmas, when I was 24, I'd just been promoted to bookkeeper. My first real salary, benefits, a desk of my own. I was proud in the way you only are the first time. So I made the mistake of sharing it at dinner. Mom set down her fork, looked around the table, and said, "They gave her the calculator because she can't handle customers." The room fell silent. My aunt shrugged. One of my sisters chuckled. My mom continued eating. I didn't know what to say. It was the real family I knew. Everyone loved their silence. I see them now. They needed me to be small. They needed me to fail. That was December. March, Mom called me for
Erupted. Greg laughed loudest. "Better count fast, Em, before they count you out." My good news melted into a joke in under a minute. Every success I brought home became ammunition. Raises turned into, "They must be desperate." My first apartment became throwing money away. So I ran an experiment. I stopped reporting anything. No promotions, no moves, no details. If the family's image of me relied on information I supplied, starving the supply should freeze the narrative. For a while, it seemed to work. Erupted. Greg laughed loudest. "Better count fast, Em, before they count you out." My good news melted into a joke in under a minute. Every success I brought home became ammunition. Raises turned into, "They must be desperate." My first apartment became throwing money away. So I ran an experiment. I stopped reporting anything. No promotions, no moves, no details. If the family's image of me relied on information I supplied, starving the supply should freeze the narrative. For a while, it seemed to work. Erupted. Greg laughed loudest. "Better count fast, Em, before they count you out." My good news melted into a joke in under a minute. Every success I brought home became ammunition. Raises turned into, "They must be desperate." My first apartment became throwing money away. So I ran an experiment. I stopped reporting anything. No promotions, no moves, no details. If the family's image of me relied on information I supplied, starving the supply should freeze the narrative. For a while, it seemed to work. Then, slowly, the story started moving again, downhill, growing meaner. By 30, the family version of Emily wasn't just modest. She was struggling, barely hanging on. Lucky they kept her. I hadn't fed them a single crumb in 6 years, yet the tale kept getting fatter and more specific. That's when I realized someone else was delivering updates, their version. Every family has a safe confidant. Mine was my cousin Rebecca, 2 years younger, living across town in Des Moines. We had a standing coffee date the first Saturday of every month at a quiet brick cafe. She got the real story, the only person who did. When I made regional director, Rebecca clinked her mug to mine. When I bought my house at 34, a cozy craftsman with a porch swing, paid in full, she toasted me with a cinnamon roll.
When Mom's
Disappointment label hardened into a permanent title. Rebecca said, "She's wrong about you, Em. Someday, everyone will know it." I held on to those words for years. That Christmas, when I was 24, I'd just been promoted to bookkeeper. My first real salary, benefits, and a desk of my own. I was proud the way you only are the first time. So I shared it at dinner. Mom set down her fork and said, "They gave her the calculator because she can't talk to customers." The room laughed. Greg laughed hardest. "Better count fast, Em, before they count you out." My announcement died on the tablecloth. Every piece of good news I brought home became twisted ammunition. Raises became, "They
Must be desperate. My first apartment became throwing money away on rent. I ran a quiet experiment. I stopped reporting anything. No promotions, no salary details, no new responsibilities. Starve the information, and the false story should freeze. For a few years, it seemed to hold. Then the narrative started moving again, on its own, growing darker, more specific. By the time I turned 30, Family Emily wasn't just ordinary. She was struggling, passed over, barely hanging on. I hadn't given them a single update in 6 years, yet the tale kept getting fatter and crueler. Someone else was feeding it. Every family has a safe person. Mine was my cousin Rebecca, 36, my aunt's daughter, living across town. We met for coffee the first Saturday of every month at our favorite little cafe. She alone heard the truth, my real titles, the house I bought outright, the quiet decision to stop correcting Mom because the fights cost too much. Rebecca always knew the perfect thing to say. "She's wrong about you." The next Saturday at the cafe, I set my coffee down and asked directly, "Rebecca, did you mention my house to anyone? Mom knew details she shouldn't." Rebecca didn't flinch. She laughed easily. You probably let it slip at Thanksgiving. You know how your mom fishes after a couple glasses of wine." It sounded plausible. "And let you convince yourself." I carried that answer home. But I also started doing something new. I quietly tracked every piece of information my family suddenly knew about me. Every leak has a source. You map the flow. A week before Christmas, at another Sunday dinner, Greg made a big announcement. He stood up like the table was his stage. "I've consolidated all of Mom's accounts. Every bill, every statement, it all comes through me now. Somebody has to take responsibility." His eyes lingered on me when he said, "somebody." What's wrong? It's either sloppy or deliberate. Sloppy is random. Deliberate has direction. Wrong toward a purpose. Greg's story had perfect shape. It pre-explained any future where I might lose my job. It made my dinner table silence look like fear instead of choice. And it kept every eye fixed on my imaginary struggles. For some reason, my brother needed that spotlight on my failure very badly. That night, the wording in my head changed. I stopped thinking of the family story as a misunderstanding. You don't catch a leak by yelling at the water. You put dye in the pipe and watch where the color flows. I wasn't ready to do that yet. I still loved the people I suspected. But the thought had arrived, and it wasn't leaving. In January, the twins turned 9. My sister-in-law Melissa threw a party at the bowling alley in Riverton. I never missed their birthdays. Tyler and Tess are the 2 purely good things that family has produced in a generation. I brought Tessa a science kit and Tyler a tackle box, watching them tear into the wrapping with pure joy.
Then Mom's voice cut through the noise behind me. She was doing her receiving line bit for Melissa's parents. "You know my son, of course. And this," her hand landed on my shoulder like a brand, "is my disappointment. The one who never made anything of herself. Every family has one." I crouched down to Tessa's level and answered gently. "It's a word for when something doesn't turn out the way a person expected." She thought about it with her whole face and said, "Like ordering the wrong thing from the menu?"
"Exactly like that," I replied. She nodded, satisfied, and ran off to rejoin the party. At 9, the world still felt fixable. I stood up with a decision already hardening. No more quiet endurance. No more protecting people who weren't protecting me. The family story about me had been weaponized for 20 years. It was time to rewrite it, permanently. But first, I needed proof. Ironclad proof. The following weeks, I moved carefully. I started feeding small, controlled pieces of information to Rebecca. Harmless test details, mixed with real ones. Then I watched where they surfaced, distorted, at family gatherings. The pattern became undeniable. The supply chain led straight back to her, and from her to Greg. My brother wasn't just benefiting from the narrative. He was helping shape it. Why? Because as long as I remained the family disappointment, he stayed the golden child, the responsible one, the hero who took care of Mom, the one who would inherit the larger share when the time came. My success threatened that entire illusion. I also quietly reviewed the financials I had been handling for Mom, the ones Greg claimed to manage. The numbers didn't lie. There were gaps, transfers, lifestyle choices that didn't match his business income. Dad's old toolbox in the garage held more than tools. It held the original family trust documents and a letter my father had written before he passed, addressed to me. In it, he admitted he saw what was happening and trusted only me with the truth. Armed with that, I reached out to Victor Harlan. The founder listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, he simply nodded and said, "You've earned the right to set the record straight. Use the company however you need." Victor Harlan, 72 years old, founder of Harlan Farm and Ranch Supply, walked in wearing his signature gray suit. Murmurs rippled through the room. Half the guests recognized him from billboards and store signs across the Midwest. He scanned the crowd until his eyes found mine. He was looking for me. Mom's smile faltered for the first time. Victor crossed the room with the calm authority of a man who had built an empire from one feed store. He shook my hand warmly in front of everyone. "Emily, I wanted to deliver this personally." He handed me a small framed plaque. "For 15 years of extraordinary leadership as Vice President of Operations. The board voted you Executive of the Year. The new regional headquarters expansion was your vision. Congratulations." The room went silent. He turned to my mother. "Mrs. Harper, you should be incredibly proud. Your daughter runs the operational heart of a company with 145 stores and nearly $400 million in revenue. She's the reason thousands of farm families get what they need. She's not a disappointment. She's the quiet force that keeps everything running." Mom's face drained of color. Greg froze mid-bite. Rebecca looked like she'd seen a ghost. Victor wasn't finished. In that calm, carrying voice that commanded warehouses and boardrooms, he continued, "For years, I've watched Emily protect her family's feelings by staying quiet about her success. But protecting people who diminish you isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. Today, that ends." He looked directly at my mother. "Mrs. Harper, the disappointment you've introduced for 20 years
has been quietly paying your property taxes, maintaining your home, and ensuring you never struggled financially, while your son Greg has been consolidating accounts in ways that benefited him far more than you. Gasps spread through the hall. Greg stood up too fast, knocking over a chair. You can't prove. Victor raised a single document. Actually, we can. The original trust documents from your late husband were very clear. Emily was named the primary executor for good reason. She's honored that responsibility without ever seeking credit, unlike others. Rebecca shrank in her seat as eyes turned toward her. The cousin who had played both sides for years suddenly had nowhere to hide. Mom's hand trembled on her glass. For the first time in decades, she had no clever comeback dressed as affection. The church friends who had laughed at every disappointment toast now looked uncomfortable. The story they'd all been told for 20 years was collapsing in real time. I stepped forward, voice steady. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came because I'm done auditioning for a family that never wanted the real me. I love you all, but love without respect is just endurance. From now on, I'll be showing up as my whole self. VP, homeowner, aunt who never misses a birthday. Take it or leave it. The applause started slowly, then built. Not for drama, but for truth.
Emily, her voice cracked. I didn't know. I thought Greg said you were struggling. Rebecca mentioned the house troubles, the job worries. I believed them. I looked at her steadily. You believed them because it was easier than believing in me. You chose the version of me that made Greg look better, that made you feel like the strong mother with one successful child and one project. Tears welled in her eyes. For once, they seemed real. I'm sorry. I let pride and old habits poison 20 years. Your father warned me. An agenda. It was awkward, tentative, and real. I want to try, she whispered. My daughter, the vice president. I have a lot to make up for. The party slowly resumed, but the energy had shifted. Old stories were dying. New ones were beginning. I caught Victor's eye across the room. He gave me a proud nod. The quiet fix who had finally fixed the most important thing of all. In the parking lot, under the string lights, Greg waited by my car. His usual confidence was gone. I was wrong. I got scared. With Dad gone, I thought if you looked too successful, Mom would rewrite the will, the legacy, everything. Rebecca fed me details, and I twisted them. It was stupid, selfish. I'm sorry. I studied my brother, the man who had spent years building me up as the failure so he could remain the hero. Sorry isn't enough, Greg, but it's a start. You'll make this right with Mom. With an agenda. It was awkward, tentative, and real. I want to try, she whispered. My daughter, the vice president. I have a lot to make up for. The party slowly resumed, but the energy had shifted. Old stories were dying. New ones were beginning. I caught Victor's eye across the room. He gave me a proud nod. The quiet fix who had finally fixed the most important thing of all. In the parking lot, under the string lights, Greg waited by my car. His usual confidence was gone. I was wrong. I got scared. With Dad gone, I thought if you looked too successful, Mom would rewrite the will, the legacy, everything. Rebecca fed me details, and I twisted them. It was stupid, selfish. I'm sorry. I studied my brother, the man who had spent years building me up as the failure so he could remain the hero. Sorry isn't enough, Greg, but it's a start.
You'll make this right with Mom. I drove home that night, no longer carrying the weight of a false story. The family narrative that had defined me for 20 years was finally rewritten, in public, with witnesses, and on my terms. Months later, things are different. Mom introduces me as my daughter Emily, vice president at Harlan Supply. Greg is working to earn back trust. Rebecca is no longer part of the inner circle. The twins now ask me about work and life with genuine pride. I still rise at 4:30 a.m. I still run the distribution centers that keep 145 stores alive. But now, I do it without hiding. If you've ever been the family punchline, remember this. Your silence might feel safe, but the truth has power. Stop auditioning for people who wrote you small. Rewrite your own story, loudly, proudly, and without apology. The quiet ones don't stay quiet forever. Thanks for listening to my story. Drop where you're watching from. Subscribe for more real transformations. And remember, sometimes the biggest victories are the ones no one saw coming, until you make them impossible to ignore.